1/3 of all murder cases in America remain open.
He had told me that if I opened my eyes, he would slit my throat.
Each one is called a cold case.
The DNA evidence taken from the victim was a match. The Linden rapist was at it again.
Based on the hit A&E television program.
A phone call is placed, one that changes a family's life forever.
Cold Case Files, the podcast.
You could see the fire in his eyes. He screamed at me, "You want it? Get your tape recorder out."
Get new episodes of Cold Case Files every Tuesday on Podcast One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 251 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Doing very well.
Yeah, excellento.
Excellente. Excellent. Oh, you're bringing that back. I see. No, I've had a good week.
Good.
Except for my back, man. I was talking about it on TCAT. My back is getting better, but it's been over a week now since I heard it.
Yeah.
And I'm just not bouncing back the way that I used to. I think we're seeing that in a lot of different areas. You know, when you get older, man, you just can't bounce back as quick as you want to.
No, it takes a little bit more time.
It does. It does. But it's all part of the journey, I guess. Let's go ahead and give our shout outs. For Patreon, we had Allie Mills.
Hey, thank you, Allie.
Jack Teague.
Hey, Jack.
Whitney Cooley.
What's going on, Cooley?
Joanna Calando.
Hey, Calando.
Kiana Collier.
Hey, appreciate that, Kiana.
Donna Wyrick.
Hey, thank you, Donna.
Kayla Rodriguez.
What's going on, Rodriguez?
Niam Griffin.
Hey, thanks, Niam.
Laura Sewell.
Good old Laura.
Leslie Bent.
What's up, Bent?
Sarah Saharan.
Ooh, Saharan.
Kafrika Hakima.
Well, thank you, Hikima.
Yeah, I love that name.
Yeah.
Angela Smith.
What's going on, Angela?
Tracy Adelot.
Well, thank you, Adelot.
And last but not least, Neil.
Just Neil.
Just Neil.
Yeah.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Aaron Wilhite.
Hey, Aaron.
So we appreciate the new support on Patreon and the continued support. We had some great PayPal donations from Dustin Jones.
Hey, thanks, Dustin.
Leah Miller.
Appreciate that, Leah.
And Aubrey Eldridge.
Thank you, Aubrey.
So thanks to everyone. Gibbs, right now we have an episode out on True Crime All the Time where we're discussing the Waumea Massacre in Seattle, Washington, which occurred back in 1983.
Yeah, it was a really good episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here. Waumea was kind of a gambling den. I'll say it that way. And some people decided that they wanted to rob the place.
Yeah.
And things took a bad turn very quickly.
Very quickly.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We're talking about the mysterious death of Debbie Wolfe. Debbie Wolfe was a 28-year-old nurse from Fayetteville, North Carolina. She went missing on December 26, 1985. Her body was found on January 1st, 1986, stuffed inside a barrel at the bottom of a pond just outside her house. The official story is that Debbie died of accidental drowning, but the circumstances around her death, details at the scene, and a strange voicemail indicate that her death may have been a homicide. So I said mysterious, and it is exactly that.
Very.
It's a very mysterious death. Deborah Ann Wolfe was born on June 19th, 1957 in Blytheville, Arkansas. She was a sweet woman, loved by many people. Debbie's family spoke about her in an October 1990 Fayetteville Observer article. They described her as a dedicated nurse, a lovely young woman, and an all-around happy person. Now, Debbie had only been a nurse for about 2 years, but everyone on her floor at the hospital liked her. Debbie thought helping people was the best thing in the world. According to her mother, she wanted to be a nurse, to repay the kindness she had been given, and she wanted to give back to her community.
Well, everybody knows we love our nurses.
We do. My mom's a nurse. My youngest daughter has been talking lately about wanting to be a nurse, and I would be very, very proud.
Sure.
I think it's a wonderful profession. And I know I've probably said it before, but my mother loved being a nurse so much that it was almost as if she couldn't wait to get up in the morning. And I know I've never had a job like that.
Right.
I don't know how many people listening have had a job that they just couldn't wait to get to. And my mom felt that way about nursing. She loved it. She didn't really want to retire. Most people can't wait to retire.
Exactly. Well, I think a job like a nurse probably means that your day's different every day, right? It's not the same thing.
Yeah. And I also think it's a very fulfilling job. You know, some jobs just are not fulfilling. You know, you leave at the end of the day kind of feeling like, what did I do today? What did I accomplish? And maybe even more to the point, I didn't change anyone's life. I didn't make anyone's life better.
Right.
You know, a lot of jobs are like that. On December 25th, 1985, Debbie celebrated Christmas with her family. Photos from that day show her happy and smiling. On December 26th, Debbie went in early for her shift at the hospital. She worked at the Fayetteville Veterans Administration Medical Center. That's what it was called at the time. It's got a different name now. She left work at 4 p.m. A hospital volunteer witnessed her leaving around this time. Debbie also called her mother on the 26th to let her know that she was leaving work. I think everyone assumed she was going home to get some sleep before her 8 a.m. shift the next morning. But Debbie never showed up for work on the 27th. She didn't answer phone calls from her boss or her family. Debbie also didn't make any outgoing calls to anyone she knew. And obviously, Gibbs, after the fact, people would come forward that knew Debbie and say that she had called, if she had called anyone. Normally, Debbie called into work if she was even going to be just a few minutes late. So, and we talk about this in quite a few cases, right? For Debbie to fail to show up to work without any explanation, that was highly unusual.
And probably concerning.
And very concerning. It is for a lot of the people that we talk about in some of these unsolved cases. You know, as well as I do, having managed so many people, you know the folks that are going to be on time, are always on time, always call if they're going to be late, or especially if they're not going to show up. And you also know that there are some people that may be 5-10 minutes late. Okay.
Why do you keep looking at me?
I'm, you know, it's just how it went down. So you're not going to be extremely worried at 8:05 or 8:10. You might be a little peeved, but you're not going to be, you know, calling in the cavalry to try to find this person, because it's happened, or it does happen on occasion.
Exactly.
But that wasn't Debbie. Jenny Edwards, Debbie's mother, told Unsolved Mysteries. The next morning, Debbie should have been at work. She had to be at work at 8. Debbie did not go to work. Debbie didn't answer her telephone. It wasn't like her at all. She never missed work. Jenny, Debbie's stepfather, John, and family friend Kevin Gordon went to Debbie's house to check on her. They later stated that, you know, their best guess was that she had gone off with someone. Debbie lived in an isolated cabin 4 miles outside Fayetteville. She lived off MacArthur Road near Fort Bragg. A small irrigation pond sat about 50 feet away from her house. Now, according to Jenny, the pond was small, but not super small. When I think of pond, I think of small, but as opposed to when somebody says lake, obviously you're talking about a much bigger body of water. It might be different for people in different parts of the country. You know, here in Ohio, a lot of people have ponds on their property.
Exactly, yeah.
Jenny also has said that the pond had a few deep spots. One important thing to note is that Debbie was an extremely neat person. She kept her house clean and organized. Debbie also had 2 dogs, Morgan and Mason, and she always took excellent care of them. And obviously, Gibbs, all of this information comes into play, right? What someone is like. Are they a slob? Are they normally very neat and organized? And pets. Right? People love their pets.
Oh, man, they do.
So as it relates to an unsolved case, pets can be very indicative of something. So Jenny was shocked when she arrived at the home. She later told Unsolved Mysteries, "We looked around and we saw beer cans lying in the yard. Her dogs had not been fed. There was a uniform laying on the floor in the kitchen and other things thrown on the floor, like maybe she just took them off." Debbie's family noticed that the beer cans were a brand she didn't drink. The dogs were loose in the yard, which was normal, but their bowls were empty, which was not. So again, this is how all of that stuff comes into play.
Yeah, starting to tell a story.
Right. So if I come home and I find a bunch of things on my kitchen floor, if I find that the dogs have not been taken care of, and I know that my wife has been home, I'm going to find that extremely odd. My wife, it's probably an understatement to say that she's a very fastidious person. She likes everything in its spot.
She does.
And if it's not there and you're the one that didn't put it there, you're going to hear about it.
Oh, for sure.
She'll even tell you.
She has told me.
I know, I've heard it. Debbie's car was also parked in an unusual position. Now, her family has never said exactly how it was parked. They've just emphasized that Debbie would have never parked her car the way it was.
Well, even more importantly, the driver's seat was pushed all the way back. Debbie was 5'3" and normally had to sit close to the steering wheel. So it kind of makes you wonder.
Well, not to overemphasize it, but again, this is something that crops up in so many cases, especially where a missing person's car is found and the seat doesn't match up with their height. We see that in case after case.
Yeah.
Naturally, it makes you think that a bigger person, a taller person, maybe a male, was driving the car last. I know that's where my mind goes.
Sure.
When this type of stuff comes up. My wife is 5'2", 5'3". I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
There is a stark difference in where the seat needs to be for the two of us to drive a vehicle. I can't even get my knees to go in the car until I have moved my wife's seat back. It's just the way it is.
And I'm sure she can't even touch the pedals if she sits in your position.
No. The inside of Debbie's house was a mess. Small things were out of place. You know, we talked about it, right? Debbie's uniform was thrown on the kitchen floor. It was almost as if she just took it off and just left it right there. But that wasn't like her.
No, we just said that she was clean, super neat,
organized.
Yeah.
Debbie's purse wasn't in its usual spot. Kevin Gordon found it shoved under her bed in a difficult to reach area. Okay. Women carry their purses pretty much everywhere.
Right.
Now, does every woman have one spot where they leave their purse? I don't know about that. My wife does have a hook that she hangs hers on, but I did say my wife is very neat and tidy. What doesn't seem right is that, a woman would push her purse up underneath the bed. Why? You're going to need it. You're going to go somewhere. You're going to want to grab it from its spot.
Right.
You're not going to want to have to get down and fish it out from underneath the bed. That just doesn't make any sense. And then finally, Jenny found a strange message that was left on Debbie's answering machine from earlier in the day. A man from the hospital called to ask how Debbie was doing. He expressed concern that she had missed several days of work and hoped she wouldn't miss any more days. I think what makes this strange is that, it came out that the message didn't come from one of Debbie's bosses or one of her coworkers. In fact, the man didn't even leave his name or a callback number.
I think the message gets even a little stranger.
Well, I know that Jenny thought that the message's timestamp was extremely odd. She said on Unsolved Mysteries, what concerned me about his message was that he said that she had missed a lot of days at work, and she hadn't. In fact, she had only missed a few hours of work at the time that this guy left the message on the answering machine. So, that's where the timestamp comes in. Yeah, anybody would find that very strange.
Yeah, why say days unless the person that left the message was just confused, or were they setting something up for later?
Yeah, and I think the exact wording, or at least what I remember, was several days. You and I have had this argument, I think, at least once or twice. To me, several is 3 or more.
Yeah.
Couple is 2. Several can be 3 or more. That's a big difference between, hey, I'm 2 or 3 hours late, and this person is saying, hey, you've missed several days of work.
Right.
So that's obviously where the mystery of the voicemail or the answering machine message comes in. The family went outside to look around, but they found no signs of Debbie. Jenny called the local sheriff's office and was told they would only do a search if Debbie had been missing for 3 days. So again, this is the early 80s. We know a lot of jurisdictions back then, they didn't really jump on the kind of missing persons call the way that I think some would do today. There was a lot of 48 hours, 3 days. We can't do anything until, X amount of time has expired.
Right.
Regardless of the circumstances and kind of, some of the things surrounding the fact that someone is missing. Debbie's family went home and they waited. Now, they called Debbie a bunch of times, but she never answered. The sheriff's office waited 5 days to search for Debbie. Jenny later told Unsolved Mysteries they searched the cabin. Later that afternoon, they brought the bloodhounds out, and they couldn't find anything at all. They then walked around the edge of the pond. I was there for that. According to the Fayetteville Observer, deputies told Jenny they could see into the bottom of the pond, and there was no indication that a body was in the water. Captain Jack Watts of the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department told Unsolved Mysteries, I think it was mentioned that they had already looked in the pond. There was no use for us to look in the pond, so I don't think we dived into the pond or that a complete search of the pond was done on that day. No, we did not.
It's not really a great answer.
No, but I do understand it. I agree with you, not great, but I do understand it. You have someone coming out from the sheriff's office. Someone else in a law enforcement capacity is saying, we've already checked that out. Are you then going to check it again yourself? Maybe some would. Can you blame the person or agency for not doing it? I think less so when you're told by a fellow. It wasn't like, this is the neighbor.
Right.
This was another law enforcement agency or someone in that capacity saying, hey, we've already checked that. There's nothing there. If that's true, right? If what he's saying is true.
Exactly.
Jenny asked if the officers would get a boat and paddle around the pond. They told her they weren't sure because it was getting late. She then asked if she could hire her own divers, and the sheriff's department gave her permission to do so. So, we said up front, Gibbs, this is a pond, but it was also said that there were a few deep spots. There must have been some depth to this pond. It's why I'm kind of confused that people are saying, well, we looked in the pond, we didn't see anything.
Right.
That really confuses me because now we're talking about needing to hire divers. We don't need divers in a situation where you think you would spot something just by looking.
Yeah. So either it wasn't as clear as they made sound, right? It was murky, muddy, whatever, and you had to get on your hands and knees as a diver and feel around.
Well, let's face it, most ponds are.
At least the ponds around here,
Yeah.
you normally can't see to the bottom.
From my experience, and that is just around here, most ponds, pretty dark water.
Yeah.
You're not seeing all the way to the bottom. You're not in the Bahamas or, some paradise where it's crystal blue water. That's just not how it is.
No.
Today's episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Simply Safe Home Security. Have you ever wanted to know what's happening at home when you're not there? We're big fans of the new wireless outdoor camera from Simply Safe. It lets you see what's happening outside right from your phone and alerts you when anyone approaches, so you always know who's there. I've been using Simply Safe for over 4 years now, and in my opinion, hands down, it's the best home security system out there. Simply Safe has everything you need to keep your home safe, from entry and motion sensors to indoor and outdoor cameras. Simply Safe is monitored 24/7 by professionals ready to dispatch police, firefighters, or EMTs to your home. Their service costs less than $1 a day, and you can set it up yourself in around 30 minutes. And there are no long-term contracts or commitments. You can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/TCAT. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off with interactive monitoring. Go to simplysafe.com/TCAT. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is also brought to you by Progressive. What's one thing you'd purchase with a little extra savings? A weighted blanket, a smart speaker, maybe that new self-care trend that you keep hearing about. Well, Progressive wants to make sure you're getting what you want by helping you save money on car insurance. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. Discounts like having multiple vehicles on your policy. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service. Day or night, they have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need them most, they're at their best. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com and see why 4 out of 5 new auto customers recommend Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. Man, Gibbs, I love that sound. It's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business. So upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. We use Shopify to sell our podcast merchandise. And as soon as we switched, the whole process became seamless and so much easier. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. It's more than a store. Shopify grows with you. Go to shopify.com/unsolved, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/unsolved right now. Shopify.com/unsolved. On January 1st, 1986, Kevin Gorton and Sergeant Gordon Childress, Kevin's friend, and an Army paratrooper went to Debbie's house to search the pond. I guess, Gibbs, both of these guys had previous experience in rescue work. The men arrived around 3:30 p.m. Childress coasted along the bottom of the pond to look for evidence. He saw 2 sets of footprints and drag marks in the mud. Then all of a sudden, he bumped into a larger object. It was a body. He came back up and he told Kevin, and then he went back down to confirm what he saw. According to Unsolved Mysteries, Kevin Gorton said he was in the water approximately 2 minutes when he called out to me and told me that he had found what looked like a set of footprints and a drag mark.
Man, that's quick.
It's 2 minutes. Childress went back underwater and looked at the body. It was protruding out of a large metal barrel. He said it was inside of what looked like a burn barrel, like one of those rusty 55-gallon oil drum type things with holes in it.
People burn their trash in,
sure,
or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of people, You may not have any experience with that, but the more rural you get, the more you're going to see that.
Yeah.
BTK had one where he used to burn some of his evidence in his backyard.
I used to have one where I burn all those documents.
Yeah. Classified.
Yes.
3-letter agency type stuff.
You got it.
Childress immediately called the police. He said he didn't touch or move the body. When the sheriff's divers removed the body from the water, he identified it as Debbie Wolfe. So I don't know, Gibbs. I mean, right off the bat, as a family member, I'd be pretty upset.
I'd be really upset. Why did it take this long to find her?
Well, first of all, when you don't start for 5 days,
that's a problem.
That you've got that to deal with. And then even after the search has started, this pond is thought to have been checked, or somebody said it was checked, but obviously it wasn't. We mentioned it, right? This guy was able to find her body in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So, it didn't take him long. The Cumberland County Coroner's Office, the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office Homicide Squad, and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation all worked on Debbie's case. The coroner declared her death an accidental drowning. Her autopsy showed no drugs, no alcohol, and no signs of foul play. The autopsy reported about a half a teaspoon of water in her upper bronchial area.
Well, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Now, I've heard the old saying that you can drown in a teaspoon of water. Have you ever heard that?
I did hear that before.
I've heard that. But I think, obviously as we go through the story, this is going to come back. Debbie was clothed. She was wearing a jacket and gloves. Her body showed no visible injuries. Gibbs, so I know what a lot of people are thinking right off the bat. How can this be called an accidental drowning when someone is found in a 55-gallon drum?
Well, I think that's one of the big pieces of the mystery.
But we said, right? No drugs, no alcohol, and probably more importantly, no signs of foul play. And the autopsy didn't indicate any visible injuries. So what evidence do they have to go on to say that she was murdered?
Right.
None. But at the same time, what's the evidence to go on to say this was an accidental drowning? Because you could say undetermined.
You could.
Right? You could just say, I don't know.
And leave it at that.
And leave it at that. But when you rule it an accidental drowning, okay, that sets some things in motion. We've seen that in a lot of cases. I just wonder kind of what the mindset was to come to that determination. So a lot of people are going to ask the question, right? How do you come up with accidental drowning? Now, Jenny Edwards later reported to the Asheville Citizen-Times that she saw what she described as discolorations on Debbie's neck and scratches on her finger. But we just mentioned it, right? The autopsy reported no visible marks on Debbie's body. The scratches could have come from Debbie's dogs or some type of small accidental injury. But I think to most people, it would be harder to explain the discolorations on her skin and why they wouldn't have been included in the autopsy report.
Yeah, and I understand what the family's saying. It's conflicting, right? We saw what we saw. Clearly you had to see it. Why didn't you put it in the report?
Now, there were what some people believe were some immediate problems with the investigation. Captain Watts explained the drowning determination by saying her dogs were running loose when the family members and the sheriff's department first met over there. Possibly she was playing with the dogs and fell in. Captain Watts believes that Debbie slipped on the ice around the edge of her pond. Debbie's jacket probably weighed her down and made it difficult for her to get out of the water. He also found some evidence that Debbie had back problems, which possibly would have made it difficult for her to get out of the water once she fell in. County detectives claimed Debbie got frightened and disoriented in the water. She suffered from something called immersion syndrome. So instead of moving towards the shore, she got confused, right? And they believe she moved deeper into the water. Now, I get what they're saying. But what's the evidence, right, that is pointing to this?
Right.
These are theories.
Sure.
Which leads me back to, my point of how can you conclusively say accidental drowning? It's a big point in this case, right? So we have to ask that question. Kevin Gordon told Unsolved Mysteries a typical coroner drowning would be eyes open, mouth open, hands and arms in a very clawed state, just a fight for life. And apparently this was very contrary to how Debbie was. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth was closed. Her arms were in a relaxed state. Her whole body was relaxed. Kevin said she looked like she was asleep. Debbie was found in about 5.5 feet of water, about 30 feet from the edge of the pond. Now, the water at the edge of the pond was just a few inches deep, and it was only knee deep about 5 feet from the edge. So obviously it dropped off. The bottom kind of gently sloped to the deepest part of the pond. By all accounts, there were no real sudden drop-offs, and Debbie was a good swimmer.
Debbie was 5'3" and found in a little bit more than 5 feet of water. I get it was probably cold, but couldn't she maybe push herself up to keep her head up and work her way to the shore, if that's what happened?
So that's a question, right, that people ask. Another big question that a lot of people ask in this case is, how could Debbie have been dragged 30 feet from the edge of the pond if she was by herself? Now, county detectives tried to explain this by saying it was, this immersion syndrome, right? She got so disoriented that instead of moving back towards the edge, she went deeper. I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibility. It's just tough.
Yeah.
When you're a person who can swim, and especially if you're kind of called a good swimmer, 5.5 feet of water. Now, if you slip and fall and you're incapacitated, that's different.
It is.
But wouldn't you have some sort of visible sign? You hit your head on something. You would think that you would see something like that. We don't have that.
We don't.
So again, it's part of why this case is so mysterious. Jenny has also stated that Debbie was careful not to go near the edge of the pond in the winter because she didn't want to fall in. Kevin Gordon also noted that Debbie's body and clothes were very clean. But he has said that he and Gordon Childress had to spend about 3 days cleaning their diving gear after being in that water for just 20 minutes. So I think to him, he has questioned how Debbie wasn't covered in the same debris that ended up on their diving gear.
I think that's really valid. How could she not have the debris, the mud, or whatever on her, but yet they had it all over them?
Well, I think one could make the argument that if she was tucked into the barrel when she went into the water, then maybe she would not have picked up this same debris the same way they did.
Yeah.
Because the barrel would have shielded her clothing or whatever from, this muck or whatever it is. Gibbs, you know how much I love Hi-Chew. I talk about it all the time. Whenever I put a piece of Hi-Chew candy in my mouth, it never fails to make me smile. I'm still partial to the pina colada. Hi-Chew has a very interesting double layer. It's not only visually appealing, but it's also a part of their special patented flavor release technology. It also has a very unique chewy texture. Hi-Chew isn't a gum. It's not a taffy. It's just a texture that's different from other candies. Hi-Chew has no artificial flavor taste at all. And that's because they use concentrated fruit juices and purees. So every time you put a piece of Hi-Chew in your mouth, you experience an explosion of flavors. We want you to love Hi-Chew as much as we do. Visit www.hi-chew.com/win. That's hi-chew.com/WIN and enter to win an exclusive bucket full of Hi-Chew candy and swag. While you're there, check out how you can become a member of the Hi-Chew Chew Crew, which is an exclusive club where you receive special offers and all the cool things. Go to hi-chew.com/win. On January 3rd, 1986, An article came out in the Charlotte Observer with Ginny announcing her displeasure with what she called a lack of interest and a slipshod investigation. So the other thing that kind of leapt out at me, Gibbs, is we're still very early on, right? Less than a couple of weeks. This article comes out and she's pretty much bashing the investigation. So I think they weren't happy. Ginny wasn't happy. Others weren't happy right from the get-go. It's a little different than what we see in some cases where, that kind of displeasure takes a while,
right,
to creep in when you see things not happening that you think should be happening. This was pretty much from Jump Street.
Well, but when you take 5 days to start
the
investigation,
it probably developed during those first 5 days.
Yeah. And then somebody else finds the body instead of your own team.
Yeah, good points. On January 5th, Sheriff Otis Jones asked the State Bureau of Investigation to probe his department's handling of the case. Okay, I don't know if that is all that normal. Most people don't like to invite others to criticize them or, really kind of open up the books and say, hey, tell us what we did wrong. Kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
According to the Asheville Citizen-Times, a spokesman announced that they were seeking assistance because of the manner in which the entire thing was handled in regards to the media. The fact that Mrs. Edwards and her friends and some of the Criminal Investigation Division at Fort Bragg were involved Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before we were notified on Monday. And the fact that Mrs. Edwards is not pleased with our investigation. Maybe that kind of sheds a little bit of light on why he asked for this probe by the State Bureau of Investigation, because a lot of things were coming out, right, that were negative.
Sure.
From the family. I'm sure they weren't the only ones.
I mean, really, up to this point, the investigation hasn't gone the way that I think anybody would hope for.
So we know Ginny, Debbie's mom, is not happy with the way the investigation was going. It got worse. She became furious when the sheriff's department denied that Debbie was even found inside a barrel. Debbie definitely owned a large barrel. She used it to store firewood outside her cabin. She occasionally used it for target practice.
And the fact that the barrel was missing from her property
kind of tells you something.
Sure.
According to many, the barrel was in the pond on January 1st. But when the sheriff's office returned the next day to drain the pond partially, it was gone. Ginny has said that she knew the sheriff's department divers saw the barrel because she overheard one of the divers discussing the barrel in the pond. They were talking about how to mark it and get it out of the water. Ginny told Unsolved Mysteries, I asked one of our friends who was there. I said, what happened? Do they have the barrel? And they said, no, they decided to leave it there. They'll get it in the morning. The next day, they went back to get the barrel and they said that the barrel was gone. All of a sudden, it didn't exist. The same barrel that had been there the night before. Captain Watts contradicted Ginny in his Unsolved Mysteries interview. He said, in my opinion, and in the opinions of some of the investigators, what appeared to be a barrel to some of the divers could have been Debbie's jacket, which may have ballooned out as she was laying at that angle in the bottom of the pond. The deputies drained the pond 2 to 3 feet and did not find the barrel. The water was reportedly crystal clear. Additionally, Gordy Childress couldn't find the footprints and drag marks when he went in the water with a sheriff's diver. So we've got a lot going on here, centered around this barrel. And again, it's a big part of the mystery in this case. You have Gordon, you have Childress. They're in the water. They say they saw the barrel. You have Ginny, who says she overheard people from law enforcement talking about the barrel. Now, all of a sudden, the barrel is missing, and the captain is saying, well, it could have been her jacket.
Well, look, I think there's a big difference between a metal barrel and a jacket.
Ballooning up in the water.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a huge difference.
These were experienced rescue divers. I think they would know the difference.
Gordon Childress defended Ginny. He said, there was no doubt in my mind. I'm 100% positive that it was an old burn barrel or something of that nature. Metal, rusted, 55-gallon type drum that the body was in. So I mean, Gibbs, this was a guy who was in the water.
Yeah.
And he's being very specific.
Descriptive.
Very descriptive. I mean, most people know what a 55-gallon barrel looks like. And then, you have Jenny, who knew that Debbie had this barrel on her property. She said she went over to the spot where the barrel was and the barrel was gone. She even said that the indentation of the barrel was still there on the ground, just the barrel was no longer there. I mean, to me, that is very telling, if that is true.
Yeah.
You know what a 55-gallon barrel looks like.
Right.
Very easy to spot, probably the indentation of where it would have been. You can see the circumference, kind of all lines up.
Yeah.
Here's a mother who, is probably at that cabin how many times, has seen that barrel how many times, and now it's not there. But these weren't the only problems with Debbie's case. There was an even bigger issue that nobody could seem to explain. At least with some of the other stuff, Gibbs, people had given explanations. I'm not sure that I love them, that they seem all that plausible to me. But this was a biggie. According to Jenny, Debbie was not wearing her own clothing when her body was pulled from the pond. Jenny kept the box of all the clothing Debbie was wearing when she was found. Jenny told Unsolved Mysteries, "When I got a chance to examine the clothes that were on Debbie's body, I looked at them very carefully, and I realized that those were not Debbie's clothes. The pants were very, very much too long for Debbie. The bra cup size was 3 sizes too large for her, and around size, it would have been 2 sizes too large for her. The shoes, Debbie wore a lady size 7, and these were a men's size 6, which winds up being about 3 sizes bigger."
Well, that's a problem, because whose clothes does Debbie have on? And why would she have those clothes on?
And how many guys wear a size 6?
Yeah, that I don't have a clue.
That's a small shoe, right?
Yeah.
For a man.
For a man.
Sorry for anybody that's listening right now who wears a men's size 6, but that is a pretty small shoe. The average is what, Gibbs? 10.5? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
In men's sizing. That's about the most common men's size shoe, I believe, is somewhere between 10.5, something like that. The police found a men's field jacket hanging in Debbie's house. Jenny spoke about Debbie's field jacket to Fayetteville Observer columnist Larry Cheek in 1990. Debbie did own a field jacket that belonged to one of her brothers. Her brother was 6 foot tall, weighed 185 pounds. The jacket found hanging in her house wasn't Debbie's. According to Jenny, it was a men's small, brand new with no markings. Debbie was found wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers shirt. And apparently, Gibbs, no one who knew her had ever seen this shirt before. According to Jenny, Debbie was also wearing glass beads and a Native American necklace. The necklace held a pouch with what Jenny described as an evil eye symbol. And according to her, Debbie didn't own any jewelry like this. So I think there's no doubt, right? At least in Jenny's mind and in the family's mind, there are so many inconsistencies here. And when you talk about the clothing, there are just more inconsistencies that kind of further cement in their mind that Debbie was murdered. This was not an accident, an accidental drowning. She was murdered.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the fact that she had a barrel on her property that is now missing, her yard and her house was in disarray. I mean, she was somebody that was organized, neat, loved to clean, it sounded like. So I think you have to ask yourself, did something happen at her place? And then was she placed in the barrel and the barrel was dragged over to the pond?
Hey folks, if you're thinking about breaking some bad habits this year, start with this one: overpaying for your prescriptions. To do that, get in the good habit of always checking GoodRx to help find the best price for your prescription medication. I've been using GoodRx for quite a while now. For me, I used to visit just one pharmacy all the time, not knowing that prescription prices can vary between pharmacies by as much as $100. Well, it turned out that I was paying too much. Now I always use GoodRx to instantly find discounts and compare prices at all the pharmacies in my neighborhood. GoodRx is free, easy to use, and could instantly save you up to 80%. Plus, it's accepted at over 70,000 pharmacies nationwide, like CVS, Kroger, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Vons, Walmart, and more. So for simple, smart savings on your prescriptions, check GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/unsolved. That is goodrx.com/unsolved. goodrx.com/unsolved. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used instead of insurance. In 2021, GoodRx users saved an average of 79% on retail prescription prices. And next, let's talk about Best Fiends. Best Fiends is my favorite way to treat my brain to a much needed recharge. It's like a mental spa day that you can enjoy wherever you go. I'm approaching level 350. I've been playing Best Fiends for some time now. I love this game. It gives me those needed breaks between the writing and the research and the producing of the podcasts. Best Fiends is a mobile puzzle game that anyone can download and play. So it doesn't matter if you only have a few minutes or you have a couple of hours. You can have fun during that time playing Best Fiends. The game features tons of cute characters that help you solve thousands of fun puzzles. And the more you play, the more characters there are to collect. And the more you win, the more challenges you face. Best Fiends does an amazing job of adding new content, new characters, challenging puzzles. Things are being added all the time. So when you're ready to give your brain some TLC, download Best Fiends free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends. Folks, do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. And it's because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. And Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and has helped them save over $100 million. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/unsolved. Go right now. Truebill.com/unsolved. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/unsolved. So going on the theory that Debbie was murdered, I think as the family believes, that leads to the question: if she was, who would want to harm her?
Right.
One of Debbie's responsibilities at work was coordinating with hospital volunteers. And Jenny has stated that there was a volunteer at the hospital that wanted to become romantically involved with Debbie. Apparently, Debbie had talked about this with a lot of people, including this guy, and told him that she would be his friend, but nothing else. It's been reported that this volunteer had a history of psychiatric illnesses and had obtained Debbie's home phone number without her permission. Now, sources don't say if Debbie reported the volunteer. Jenny believes the man who left the message was this hospital volunteer. She went as far as contacting Captain Watts from the sheriff's department and sharing her suspicions. Captain Watts told Unsolved Mysteries that they did investigate this man. He said anyone that the family requested that we talk to or interview, we tried to interview. Of course, through the information we received through these interviews, there was nothing there that we could use in any criminal prosecution, or there was nothing there that would indicate to us that this was a homicide. Now, that statement I understand. But I will go back to one of my earlier questions. You haven't found anything to conclusively be able to say, okay, this was a homicide. I'm still not understanding how you were able to conclusively call it an accidental drowning.
Yeah, I'm confused by that. You look at the information provided, I come away with a different theory.
Well, at the very least, you can theorize either one, but wouldn't they still just be theory? And that's why I go back to kind of the undetermined or, some kind of classification like that. It just seems like it makes more sense to me. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't want to harp on it, but it is something that keeps running through my mind. Now, Jenny has stated that this volunteer, left the state. She said he was investigated by the sheriff's department the night that the body was brought to the surface. However, he provided an alibi and refused to take a polygraph, so he wasn't questioned any longer. He left several days after that to go out of state. Reportedly, there was also a second hospital volunteer that was interested in Debbie. Debbie told everyone at work that she wasn't attracted to this guy. She told him also that she would only be his friend because she was interested in someone outside of the hospital. Jenny eventually came to the conclusion that Debbie was held hostage for several days and murdered, most likely by one of these hospital volunteers. She believes that this person removed the barrel to make Debbie's death seem like an accident. I think ultimately, Gibbs, she believes the police decided that it was just easier to kind of sweep everything under the rug. According to her, all concrete leads were ignored. Captain Watts told the Fayetteville Observer, "Nobody's ever 100% certain. Evidence showed, and from the information we had, I feel like it was a drowning. I think we were pretty adamant about what we believed. We investigated everybody. We have done a pretty good investigation. We couldn't find any marks on the body. It would have been there if there had been foul play. That was consistent with what the medical examiner found." And to me, Gibbs, the most important word there is believe. They were adamant about what they believed.
Right.
Okay. Is that enough to make a conclusive ruling? I think it's one of the questions that I'm struggling with. Jenny told Unsolved Mysteries, there are people out there who know what happened to Debbie, and I'm hoping that they will come forward and finally say something. She was loved by very, very many people. And I think she has a right to be put to rest finally. And I'd like to do that. So we've referenced this Unsolved Mysteries episode quite a bit.
We have.
A lot of information comes from it because Jenny, told them so much, right? They did in this episode on Debbie's death in 1991. That same year, the TV Guide published the story, The Case of the Dubious Drowning. They hired a private investigator named Robert Frasco to work the case. Frasco noted the pond was full of silt and her body was clean. He also came to the conclusion that Debbie was placed in the pond after her death. In his opinion, Debbie was abducted from her home and murdered. The killer wanted to stage an accidental drowning, so they returned Debbie to the pond, sunk her in the barrel, and removed the barrel later. The barrel most likely had their prints on it, so they wanted it gone.
Well, that's pretty brave if that's how it happened, that they came back and removed the barrel between the time it was found before the police came back the next day.
If that happened, to me, that means the killer was paying very close attention to what was going on. I would think at the very least had to have some eyes on what was going on at the pond at some point, had to know that the police didn't get it and had left for the night, and everybody had left for the night.
Yeah. Or they were involved somehow into the search for the body.
That's true. In October 2019, the Fayetteville Observer did a story on Debbie's case. Marvel Rushing, the wife of the late Roger Rushing, spoke to the paper about Debbie. Roger ate lunch with Debbie on December 24th or 25th. He was supposed to have lunch with her on the 27th, but Debbie had gone missing. Marvel said it was troubling, and I knew there was a lot of gossip. No truth to it we know of. Stories were flurrying around. She told the paper, there's always going to be questions. nothing was ever concrete. Now, she's definitely right about that, right? To me, there's not much of anything concrete about this case. There are definitely a number of questions that remain. I think one is, why was Debbie wearing clothes that were 2 to 3 sizes too big for her, according to Jenny?
Right.
If this is correct, it's very mysterious.
It is. Why would she have those clothes on?
You know, if her home was always tidy, why was it suddenly just an absolute mess? Why were there beer cans all over the yard and beer that she wasn't known to drink?
Yeah.
Why was her purse stuffed under the bed? I mean, you know, you can just go through all of these different questions. And then, you know, look at somebody like Gordon Childress. What reason would he have to lie about Debbie being stuffed into a barrel? We mentioned it, right? Debbie did own a barrel, like a lot of people said she was found in.
Right.
So where is that barrel?
And why did the sheriff's divers say they never saw the barrel in the water?
Yeah, so it was either in the water and people are saying they saw it while others are saying they didn't see it, or it wasn't in the water at all, right? You've got to look at it from a couple of different sides.
Right.
But regardless of that, where did Debbie's barrel go that she was known to have out in front of her house?
Right. Why would it just all of a sudden disappear?
I mean, I think a lot of people look at that and say, okay, that lines up easily. Somebody put her in her own barrel and then put her in that pond. So I do want to go back, Gibbs, and kind of talk about this immersion syndrome, right? This was a theory presented by the sheriff's department. What is it? Why does it happen? According to a 2019 article from the journal Wilderness and Environmental Medicine, cold water immersion is the respiratory and autonomic physiologic responses after sudden immersion in cold water. Cold water drownings can happen to strong swimmers just a few feet away from the shore. They reported that there's 4 stages: cold shock, swimming failure, hypothermia, and something called circumrescue collapse. According to their article, swimming failure usually takes 30 minutes to happen to people immersed in very cold water. Research is inconsistent on the true effects and mortality rate associated with cold water immersion syndrome, but there is agreement that sudden exposure to cold water or prolonged exposure to cold water can shut down vital body systems and cause disorientation, even in strong swimmers. According to the CDC, cold water immersion creates immersion hypothermia, which develops more rapidly than normal hypothermia because cold water moves heat away from the body 25 times faster than air. This can occur in any water below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So this was a very interesting article.
It was.
I think interesting as it relates to this case.
Yeah, if you take into consideration when you think about Debbie, if she slipped on the ice and fell into the pond, she most likely would have fallen into a few inches of very cold water, knee deep at most.
So you then have to ask the question, would that be enough to cause immersion syndrome and lead to an accidental drowning? I think that's an interesting discussion to have. And I think it would make a lot of sense to have it without some of the very strange and mysterious things that go along with this case, right? If she was found in her own clothing, if she wasn't reportedly found in a barrel, you know, some of this other stuff to me would seem much, much more plausible. That she got too close to the edge, she slipped and she fell in and she drowned. But that's not what we have been told about this case.
Right.
You know, this is not, you know, somebody who was found wearing their clothes. This was not somebody that was found wearing, you know, the clothes that they owned, even the size of clothes that they normally wore. When you factor all that into this case, the accidental drowning just seems less and less plausible. Not that somebody can't drown or couldn't have drowned in that pond. What I'm saying is all the other factors that go into the case don't seem to line up with that being the most likely theory to me.
Yeah, I get that.
After 1991, really decades passed with no updates, no further leads in Debbie's case. Lieutenant Sean Swain, a spokesman for the sheriff's office, told the Observer in 2019 that because Debbie's death was ruled an accident, the records no longer exist. His email to the Observer stated, "We do not have anyone now who was working in 86. They have all retired. So we cannot speak on this event." And this is something I said early on. The classification in the beginning makes a big difference.
Huge.
To how things play out down the road. If you term something a homicide, or if you term something an accident, there are consequences to that, right? There are things that happen down the road. Okay, records no longer exist.
Because it was an accidental drowning.
And they probably only need to be kept for X amount of time. Where if it was undetermined, maybe that timing is different. If it's a homicide, I'm sure the timing is different. I'm not saying that it should have been conclusively ruled a homicide. What I'm saying is I'm surprised it was ruled an accidental drowning.
With all the different discrepancies?
As opposed to leaving it more open for investigation. We just don't know what happened. Because I don't think we know what happened today. Jenny Edwards and Debbie's father, Jerry Wolfe, died in 2002. 4 of Debbie's siblings have also passed away. Captain Watts was retired. As of the 2019 Observer article, pretty much almost everybody connected with this case, Gibbs, has since passed away or has retired. I think as we wrap up this case, no doubt, I think anyone who looks into it can't help but question, right, some of the things that occurred and find what has been reported as very mysterious.
Yeah.
You know, I keep using that word, but I don't know what else to use. You know, it's perplexing. It's mysterious. It's discombobulating. I can come up with some words, but you know, at the end of the day, there are a lot of people fascinated with this case because of these things. There's a lot that doesn't line up. I mean, at the very least, you'd have to say that.
Yeah, I just don't see concrete facts to take you down to that determination of accidental.
Now, could it be? Sure. Could it have been a homicide? I think so. Yeah,
Possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of those are on the table. Jenny Edwards made a statement. There are so many questions and not even one answer. Unless someone finally comes forward with information, the truth behind Debbie's death will remain a mystery. You know, unfortunately, that is true in pretty much every unsolved case that we do. We always have more questions than answers.
Sure.
And until the person who actually knows what happened comes forward with the information, those questions are going to remain. Those mysteries are going to still exist. There's just no way around it.
Yeah. Unfortunate, but true.
But that's it for our episode on the mysterious death of Debbie Wolfe. Some would call it an unsolved murder. Some may call it a tragic accident. I just call it mysterious for sure.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear those.
Hey guys, it's Lauren out in Frisco, Texas. Thank you for all that you do with sharing these stories. And I've been an avid listener for years now and am a Patreon supporter as well. I'm reaching out because I was just listening to the case on Kieran and wanted to offer you a little corrective feedback. It's actually pronounced Willamette, Oregon. And I know this because I'm in the wine industry, and Willamette's known for amazing Pinot Noir. And so an easy way to remember how to pronounce it is Willamette, damn it. Hopefully that's not going to be offensive to your listeners, but I hope you all have a great day and keep your own time ticking.
Man, that's some good red wine.
No, that's definitely not going to be offensive to our listeners. I will say this, Gibbs, you know, some town names city names are tough. I just would have never thought to say it that way. however I said it, I'm sure it was probably like Williamette or Willamette or something like that. To me, it just seems like it would be that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it so often is not the way that I think it is. And I don't think to look some of them up because they seem fairly straightforward.
Exactly.
But those are the ones that always get me in trouble.
Especially those ones in Oklahoma.
Oh, well, Oklahoma, I almost have to look everything up.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, it's Renee again. I called a while back about the Ronald Ward West Memphis 3 case. Anyway, I was calling again to let you know that my boyfriend and I have listened to true crime together. And, you know, my boyfriend makes fun of the way I say and, but we noticed that Mike says it just like me. And so we turned it into a drinking game. So whenever Mike says, and, we take a shot. So thanks for all you do, and keep your own time ticking.
So the one thing that we've learned over, 5+ years of doing the show,
Yeah.
is that people will develop a drinking game around just about anything.
That's true.
We've heard a lot of them based on things that I say, things that you say. You know, what I would caution is doing it on something that I say a lot. I don't want anybody to get hurt, and drink responsibly.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Marina Nichols, and I am just calling to say that I love your guys' podcast. I started listening to it recently. I've been binging all the episodes. I'm up into about episode 80 or so, and I just started listening a couple weeks ago. I also wanted to give you guys a suggestion for a possible future episode. It's one from where I grew up. It's hometown for me. It is called the Elsie Valley Murders. It is a series of unsolved murders and a unsolved disappearance that happened back in 79 to 82. And there were 4 confirmed victims, 1 suspected victim, which technically makes us a possible serial killer. Another interesting thing about the case is that there were 3 people who confessed to the crime. So that was pretty cool, pretty interesting, makes things a little, confusing, I suppose. And also, there were 2 documentaries, one that was on Investigation Discovery, and there was also a 2-part documentary series that was made about it. So yeah, I just wanted to call and let you guys know I love your podcast, and I hope to possibly hear the case that I suggested in a future episode. Thank you guys. Bye.
All right. Appreciate the voicemail. So I wasn't sure exactly what she meant by LC. I thought maybe she was talking about the Lewis Clark Valley serial killer. If that's the case, we actually did that.
Yeah.
On Unsolved, it's episode 63.
So she missed it.
Well, if that's the one she's talking about. If not, then I'm definitely into researching this other thing. Absolutely. If it's something else. But we'll check it out.
Yeah, we will.
Check it out. All right, buddy. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Looking for shows you'll love to death? This Valentine's Day, solve the what to watch mystery with Pluto TV. Investigate true crime series like Forensic Files and FBI Files, or serial binge classics like CSI and Narcos. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of other channels and thousands more movies and TV shows, all for free. Download the Pluto TV app on your favorite streaming device and start watching today. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.
How much is your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the chance to focus your time on what you do best. Don't waste your time mailing letters or shipping packages. Stamps is there to help. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. Get up to 89% off USPS, UPS, and other carriers, and schedule free package pickups all from one place. Stamps.com also makes it easy to track shipments, manage contacts, and report on how much you send and spend. Over the last 28 years, more than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Don't waste time worrying about being a postage expert or standing in line to drop off letters and packages. Let Stamps.com do what they do best so you can do what you do better. Go to Stamps.com/audio to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.